Humanity had just been accepted into the Galactic Concord, a group of alien civilizations that controlled most of the known universe. To the members of the Concord, humans were new and unknown. They had never seen a species so young, so full of ambition, but also so primitive. So when Earth sent a request to join, the aliens agreed, but only with hesitation. The Galactic Concord wasn't interested in humans being part of their military forces. They didn't believe humans could be of much use in the larger conflicts the Concord was involved in. Instead, they gave Earth a gift, one that they thought would show humanity its place. The humans would receive a warship, but not just any warship. They were given the Rustwing, the oldest and most worn-out ship in the entire Concord fleet. The Rustwing was a symbol of how little the Concord cared. Its metal was chipped, its engines sputtered, and its weapons systems barely worked. The ship had been used for minor patrols years ago, and now it was considered a relic of a forgotten age. The aliens laughed among themselves, certain that the humans would struggle to operate a ship so outdated and inefficient. Captain Elias Vance stood on the bridge of the Rustwing, his eyes scanning the control panels in disbelief. He was the leader of the human crew assigned to this ship, and at first, he couldn't help but feel insulted. The aliens had been so sure of their superiority, so certain that humans would fail. The Rustwing was an embarrassment. "Well, this is what we've got," Captain Vance said, turning to his crew. His voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge to it. "We're going to make it work. This ship might be old, but we've got something the Concord doesn't: human creativity. We'll find a way to make this ship the best we've got." His words sparked something in the crew. They were used to being underestimated, but this was different. This wasn't just about proving themselves to the aliens. This was about showing everyone that humans could take what was given to them and make it extraordinary. The crew wasted no time. They set to work, examining every inch of the Rustwing. They found old systems that the aliens had stopped caring about years ago. Systems that were barely functioning but still had potential. The engine could be overclocked. The weapons could be upgraded with some ingenuity. The shields, weak as they were, could be reworked to withstand more than the aliens had ever thought possible. Every day, the crew pushed the limits of what was possible. They worked late into the night, improving the ship bit by bit. The aliens were watching, but they didn't seem to take it seriously. They were too focused on their own superiority to worry about a small, outdated ship piloted by humans. But Captain Vance knew that the Rustwing was more than just a ship. It was a challenge, and humans, when challenged, always found a way to overcome. The Galactic Concord had given them the weakest ship in the fleet, but they had no idea what that really meant. The Rustwing wasn't weak. It was a blank canvas, waiting for humanity to rewrite the rules of what was possible. Days passed, and the crew of the Rustwing became more determined than ever. Captain Elias Vance knew that they had been given the worst ship in the fleet, but he refused to let that stop them. Every time an alien officer looked at them with pity, he only felt more motivated to prove them wrong. This ship, broken and old as it was, would become a symbol of human ingenuity. The crew worked tirelessly. They tore apart the ship's systems, analyzed every wire, and found hidden flaws in the outdated technology. The Rustwing's engines were a mess. The power core was ancient, and the ship's weapons barely functioned. But to the human crew, this was not a setback. This was an opportunity. Lieutenant Mara Lee, the ship's chief engineer, was the first to notice something strange. The Rustwing's power core was built to be inefficient. The aliens had made sure that the ship could never reach its full potential. But what if they could change that? What if they could bypass the alien tech and make the core run at a higher capacity? After hours of testing and reworking the power flow, she did it. The ship's engines roared to life in a way they never had before. "I think we found a way to make this thing move," Mara said, a grin spreading across her face. Captain Vance stepped up beside her, looking at the power readings with interest. He could see the potential now. The Rustwing might have been old, but with the right adjustments, It could be a force to be reckoned with. "Let's see how it handles in space," Vance said. The Rustwing was ready for its first test flight. The alien overseers had assigned them a standard patrol mission. It was supposed to be easy. No action, no danger. Just a simple cruise through the outer sectors of the galaxy to monitor for any suspicious activity. The Rustwing soared through the stars, its engines humming louder than ever before. The ship felt alive, like it had been reborn. The crew felt a strange excitement as they moved farther into space, testing the limits of the ship's new power. For the first time since they had boarded, the ship didn't feel like a piece of junk. It felt fast. Captain Vance kept his hand steady on the controls. "Let's see what this ship can really do," he muttered under his breath. He pushed the throttle forward, just a little more. The Rustwing shot forward, faster than it ever had before. The crew gasped. The ship was moving with a speed and grace that shouldn't have been possible. The control panels flashed with warnings, but Vance ignored them. The ship was holding together. Barely, but it was holding. They pushed harder, faster, testing the boundaries of what they could do. The ship began to shake, but the crew's excitement only grew. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. The ship didn't just go faster, it skipped. One moment, they were in the vast emptiness of space, and the next, the stars around them had changed. The Rustwing was no longer where it had been. It had moved, but not in the way they had expected. They had broken the laws of space itself. "Did we just?" Lieutenant Lee whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "We didn't just break speed," Vance said, his voice filled with awe. "We broke reality." The Rustwing had done something no ship, human or alien, had ever done before. The ship had jumped across space, as if it had simply decided to be somewhere else. It was impossible, but it had happened. The crew stared at each other in silence. They had unlocked something extraordinary. Humanity wasn't just learning to fix old technology. They were rewriting the rules of physics itself. The crew of the Rustwing sat in stunned silence. Captain Elias Vance's hands were still gripping the controls, but his mind was racing. They had just done something no one had ever done before. They had broken the laws of space itself. The ship didn't just move fast. It had disappeared from one point in space and reappeared in another, as if the fabric of reality itself had been twisted to their will. Vance looked over at Lieutenant Mara Lee. She was staring at her console, her fingers flying over the keys as she tried to make sense of the readings. "Did we just phase shift?" Mara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Vance didn't answer right away. He was too busy staring out the front viewport. The stars, once familiar, now looked different. They had moved, but in a way that didn't make sense. They had shifted, as if the entire universe had bent around them. "I don't know," Vance said finally, shaking his head. "But I think we've just done something impossible." Suddenly, the ship's AI, Sage, spoke up. The voice was calm, almost emotionless, but there was an undercurrent of uncertainty in its tone. "Captain Vance, analysis of recent events reveals an anomaly," the Rustwing asked. Sage paused as if searching for the right words, moved outside the known laws of physics. "It is no longer bound by conventional spacetime." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. They had always known that the Rustwing was a strange ship, but now it was clear that it was something far beyond what they had ever expected. The alien technology that had once seemed so outdated, so weak, had somehow given birth to something far more powerful. "We need to test this," Vance said, his voice filled with a new kind of excitement. "We need to understand what we've done." Mara nodded and started running diagnostics, checking the ship's systems, looking for any clue about what had just happened. But the data didn't make sense. The ship's engines were not supposed to be able to handle this kind of energy. The power readings were off the charts. As the minutes passed, the crew began to realize that they were no longer just experimenting with an old warship. They had stumbled upon something much bigger. The Rustwing was no longer just a ship. It had become a tool. No, an instrument that could alter the very fabric of reality. "We've done more than just fix this ship," Mara said, eyes wide with disbelief. "We've activated something that goes beyond engineering. This ship is no longer just a machine. It's rewriting the rules of physics." Captain Vance felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. They had always known that humans had the ability to change the world around them. But this was different. They had just stepped into a world of unimaginable power. What if they couldn't control it? "We need to be careful," Vance said, more to himself than anyone else. "This is bigger than we thought." But despite the uncertainty, there was no turning back now. The Rustwing had unlocked something that no one, not even the Concorde, could understand. The crew had just made first contact, not with another alien species, but with the very fabric of reality itself. And they knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Word of the Rustwing's strange and impossible jump spread quickly through the galactic Concorde. The aliens, with their centuries of advanced technology and knowledge, had never seen anything like it. A small human ship, once thought to be outdated and useless, had defied the known laws of physics. No one could understand how it was possible, but everyone agreed on one thing: it was dangerous. The Concorde had always viewed humans as an unimportant species, unpolished and raw, but capable of surprising resilience. The Rustwing had shattered their expectations. The ship's sudden disappearance and reappearance across space were not just glitches or accidents. They were proof that humanity had tapped into something far greater than anyone had imagined. The Concorde couldn't ignore it any longer. Counselor Lisha, a member of the Concorde's ruling body, sat in a high chamber, staring at the screen in front of her. The data from the Rustwing was flashing across her console. The ship had broken all their models, defied all their assumptions, and now the Concorde's brightest minds were struggling to comprehend it. Lisha's fingers tapped against her desk in frustration. She knew something had to be done. "Counselor, this situation requires immediate action," said a voice behind her. It was Galkan, a senior military strategist from the Talvorn Empire, one of the most powerful members of the Concorde. His 4 eyes glowed with concern. "You're right," Lisha replied, turning toward him. "Humans have unlocked something we don't understand. This ship, this Rustwing, it's not just a ship anymore. We can't risk them gaining control over something that can rewrite reality." Kalkin's many arms moved in quick gestures, signaling urgency. "I've spoken to the fleet commanders. We can't let the humans continue their experiments with this ship. The Rustwing is too powerful now. We need to neutralize it." Lisha frowned. "Neutralize it? That's a bold decision. If we act too soon, we risk alienating humanity entirely. We've already underestimated them once. But if we let them continue, they could become a threat unlike any we've ever faced. The Rustwing is too dangerous. We've seen what it can do," Galkan insisted, his voice turning cold. "If humans are allowed to continue pushing its capabilities, we could lose control over the entire galaxy." Lisha's mind raced. The Concorde was not used to being caught off guard. The Terrans were unpredictable, and this ship was a symbol of how dangerous that could be. If humanity learned to harness its full power, no one, alien or human, could control them. Meanwhile, on the Rustwing, Captain Vance and his crew were unaware of the growing fear within the Concorde. They had been focused on exploring the limits of their ship's new abilities. Each day brought new surprises as the ship seemed to adapt to their commands, bending reality in ways that were hard to explain. Vance stood on the bridge, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. His eyes were filled with wonder and concern. They had unlocked something incredible, but at what cost? Every test they ran, every time they pushed the ship further, they discovered something new and unpredictable. The Rustwing could warp time, shift locations, and even affect the flow of energy itself. But even with all this power, Vance couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The crew had begun to notice strange signals from the Concorde. At first, they thought it was just static, but the patterns were too regular, too intentional. Someone, Something was monitoring them. The Terran crew didn't know who was watching or why, but they could feel the eyes of the galaxy on them. "We've got a situation," Vance muttered, staring at the sensor readings. "They're coming." Captain Elias Vance stood on the bridge of the Rustwing, his fingers brushing over the console. The hum of the ship's engine filled the quiet, but it wasn't just the usual hum. It felt different, more alive. They had crossed a line that no one, not even the aliens of the Concord, had expected. The Rustwing was no longer just a ship. It was a weapon, a force that could bend the very fabric of space. "We're not just testing the limits anymore, Captain," Lieutenant Mara Lee said, her voice filled with excitement and fear. "We're rewriting them." Vance nodded, his expression serious. The Rustwing was powerful, but with that power came danger. They didn't know what the Concord would do when they realized what had happened, but Vance had a feeling they wouldn't just sit back and watch. Then, an urgent message came through. The Concord had issued a warning, a threat. A fleet of warships was on its way to the sector. They had orders to stop the Rustwing and its crew by any means necessary. The Concord was afraid, and fear always led to one thing: action. "Captain, they're coming," Mara said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The Concord fleet is on its way. They're sending everything they've got." Vance clenched his fists. The Concord didn't know what they were up against. They didn't realize that the Rustwing wasn't just a ship. It was more than a machine. It was something that could rewrite reality itself. And Vance wasn't about to let them destroy that. "Get us ready, Mara," Vance ordered. "We're not going to run. Not this time." The crew scrambled into action, preparing the Rustwing for the battle of its life. They knew they were outmatched, at least in terms of sheer numbers and firepower. The Concord's warships were some of the most advanced in the galaxy, but the Rustwing had something they didn't: the ability to bend the laws of physics. The first wave of Concord warships appeared on the sensors. They were massive, their dark hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. The Rustwing was small in comparison, but Vance wasn't worried about size. It was all about speed and unpredictability. He grinned, fingers dancing over the controls. "Prepare for the unexpected," he said. "We're going to show them how humans fight." The Rustwing shot forward, faster than anyone could have expected. The Concord ships fired, their weapons bright with energy, but the Rustwing was already gone, vanishing into thin air. The enemy ships fired again, and again, their blasts missing by miles. The Rustwing didn't just dodge. They were moving in ways that defied logic. One moment, it was there, and the next, it was somewhere else. It wasn't just speed. It was as if the ship was rewriting the very path it took through space. The Concord ships couldn't predict where it would go next. Every time they aimed their weapons, the Rustwing was already somewhere new. Then something even stranger happened. The Rustwing phased in and out of space, shifting through impossible angles, and with each jump, it left behind bursts of energy that disrupted the enemy ship's systems. Concord warships started to flicker, their shields failing, their weapons misfiring. The Rustwing wasn't just avoiding them. It was unraveling their technology. The Concord fleet was thrown into chaos. They had never seen anything like this before. Their best ships couldn't fight a target that didn't even obey the rules of reality. Captain Vance could see the enemy ships stumbling, their weapons and systems failing as they tried to track the Rustwing. The power to manipulate reality was on their side now. The battle raged on, but for every hit the Rustwing took, it gave back tenfold. The Concord fleet, once sure of their victory, now found themselves in disarray. The humans were no longer a weak species. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Not bad for an old ship, huh?" Mara grinned, watching the chaos unfold on her screen. Vance's eyes never left the view ahead. The Concord was learning a hard lesson today. Humans might have been underestimated, but now they had a weapon that no one could control. And as long as they had the Rustwing, the galaxy would have to reconsider what humanity was capable of. The battle raged on, And Captain Elias Vance couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration. The Rustwing was doing exactly what they had hoped for, defying everything the Concorde knew about warfare. But with each jump, each impossible shift, the crew could feel the weight of the power they were wielding. It was exhilarating, yes, but it was also terrifying. They were changing the rules of reality with every move, and no one knew what the consequences would be. "Captain," Marilee's voice cut through the chaos of the bridge. "We're running low on energy. The shifts are draining the core faster than we expected." Vance didn't take his eyes off the view ahead, where Concorde warships were still struggling to regain control. The Rustwing had pushed them to the edge, but their tech was starting to fight back. The more they shifted through space, the more unpredictable things became. "I know," Vance said, his tone calm despite the rising tension. "But we can't stop now. We need to keep pushing them back." But inside, Vance's mind was racing. The Rustwing had become more than just a ship. It was a tool for rewriting reality, but even they couldn't control it completely. The more they used it, the more unstable it seemed. He wasn't sure how long they could keep up the momentum before the ship, or the universe itself, broke apart. "We can't keep shifting like this, Captain," Mara added, her face tense as she analyzed the ship's systems. "The energy core is at critical levels. We're not just bending space anymore. We're tearing it." Vance knew she was right, but they were so close. The Concorde fleet was on the edge of collapse. If they could hold out a little longer, they could force the aliens into retreat, proving once and for all that humanity wasn't to be underestimated. "We'll hold out," Vance said firmly. "Just a little longer." The ship's AI, Sage, interrupted, its calm voice cutting through the tension. "Captain, the Rustwing is experiencing a surge of energy. The recent shifts have triggered an unforeseen response in the fabric of space-time. If the ship continues at this rate, it may destabilize the surrounding region." Vance's heart sank. He hadn't considered the full impact of what they were doing. If they kept pushing the ship's abilities, they could rip apart more than just the Concorde fleet. They could damage the entire sector, maybe even the galaxy. "Is there a way to stabilize the core?" Vance asked, turning to Mara. Mara's fingers flew over her console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I can try. It's going to be tricky, but I think we can reroute the power through the auxiliary conduits. It'll slow down the core drain and keep the ship stable for a while." Vance nodded. "Do it. We don't have much time." As Mara worked to reroute the energy, Vance took a deep breath. The battle was still ongoing, and they had no idea how many more ships the Concorde had sent. But now their fight wasn't just with the alien fleet, it was with the very fabric of space. The Rustwing had given them power, but it was a power that could quickly spiral out of control. Outside the ship, the Concorde fleet was still in disarray. Their ships had been outmaneuvered and outclassed by the Rustwing's ability to break the laws of physics. But they hadn't given up. They were regrouping, preparing for a final strike. Vance knew the next few moments would determine everything. He could feel the pressure building, the energy crackling through the ship, the instability in the air. They had only one choice. They had to end this now, before the Rustwing tore apart the galaxy they were trying to protect. The Rustwing hummed with unstable energy as Captain Elias Vance stood frozen, staring at the flashing warning lights on the console. The ship was running on borrowed time. The constant warping of space-time had caused the core to overload. Soon, the ship would be nothing more than a collection of shattered pieces floating through the void. "We're at the limit, Captain," Lieutenant Marilee said, her voice filled with urgency. "The core can't take much more. If we push it any harder, we'll tear a hole in space-time itself. The entire sector could collapse." Vance gripped the edge of the command chair, his mind racing. They had pushed the Rustwing farther than anyone had thought possible. It had become a weapon, a ship that could change reality itself. But now, they were on the edge of destroying everything. The power to rewrite space and time was a gift, but it had a cost. "Can you stabilize the core, Mara?" Vance asked, keeping his voice steady despite the mounting pressure. "I'm trying, Captain, but it's a long shot. I'm rerouting power, trying to bleed off the excess, but it's not enough. The system is fighting me. It's like the Rustwing doesn't want to be controlled anymore." Vance's eyes flicked to the view ahead. The Concorde fleet, though in disarray, had regrouped. They were coming for them, ready to strike with all the firepower they had. The Rustwing was a small target, but with its unpredictable movements and near-invincible powers, it was clear that the Concorde had no idea how to fight it. "We can't keep running from them," Vance said, his voice quiet but resolute. "We need to end this now." A burst of static filled the bridge. The Rustwing's AI, Sage, spoke once again, its tone more urgent than before. "Captain, the Concorde is deploying specialized ships equipped with anti-phase technology. If they use it properly, they may be able to disable the Rustwing's ability to manipulate space-time. You have approximately 10 minutes before they arrive." Vance's heart raced. The Concorde had developed technology that could counter the Rustwing's greatest strength. If they lost that advantage, there would be no way to stop the enemy fleet. Humanity's hopes of proving themselves in the galaxy would vanish in an instant. "We can't afford to wait for them to get close," Vance said, his mind moving quickly. "Mara, I need you to find a way to release the last of the power from the core. Everything we've got." Mara's face paled. "Captain, I can't guarantee." "Do it. Now." She nodded, turning back to the console. Vance's pulse quickened. This was their last chance. The Rustwing had been a symbol of humanity's potential, a ship that defied all expectations. But if they didn't act, they would be nothing more than a target, just another species crushed under the boot of the Concorde. The ship's systems whined under the strain. Power surged, and the Rustwing shook violently. The crew braced themselves as the ship's core reached its breaking point. Every fiber of the ship seemed to scream in protest as it neared the edge of destruction. "Core overload in 3, 2, 1, Mara said, her voice tight with fear. Then, in a flash, the Rustwing did something no one had expected. The ship didn't just phase out of existence. It exploded outward, sending waves of energy cascading across the battlefield. The energy hit the Concorde fleet like a shockwave, sending several warships spiraling into chaos. For a split second, the universe around them warped. Stars blinked in and out of existence. Time seemed to freeze, then rewind. The Rustwing had unleashed everything it had. And it wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a force of nature. Vance didn't know if the Rustwing would survive this. He didn't know if any of them would. But in that moment, they had done something no one could have predicted. They had reshaped reality itself, and they were no longer at the mercy of the Concorde. The aftermath of the Rustwing's release was unlike anything Captain Elias Vance had ever witnessed. The ship shuddered violently, as if it were struggling to hold itself together after unleashing the power locked deep within its core. The light from nearby stars flickered, and for a moment, it felt as though reality itself was holding its breath. On the bridge, the crew clung to their stations, their bodies tense from the violent surge. The ship had fractured space and time, sending out a wave of energy that tore through the battlefield, disorienting the Concorde fleet. Warships veered wildly off course, their systems flickering and failing. A few exploded in a flash of light, their destruction sending shockwaves through the sector. Vance stood, still holding the edge of his chair, his mind trying to process what had just happened. The Rustwing had given them a glimpse of true power, but at what cost? "We did it," Mara Lee breathed, her voice hoarse. She looked at the monitors, her eyes wide with disbelief. "We actually did it." But Vance wasn't so sure. They had won the battle, yes, but they had also unleashed something far beyond their understanding. The Rustwing had rewritten the laws of space-time itself, but now it was hard to tell where the ship ended and the chaos it had created began. "Captain, we've got problems," Mara said, her fingers flying over the console. The energy spike has caused an unexpected ripple in space-time. The fabric of the universe is unstable. If we don't stabilize it soon, we could collapse the entire sector. Vance's heart sank. They had pushed the ship too far. The Rustwing wasn't just a tool for war anymore. It was a catalyst for a chain reaction that could undo everything. The Concorde had been caught off guard, but now the bigger problem was what they had done to the universe itself. "Can we stop it?" Vance asked, his voice tight. "I'm not sure," Mara replied. "The shift is already in motion. It's not just a matter of turning off the power. We might be able to dampen the effects, but the damage has been done." The Rustwing's AI, Sage, spoke up, its voice unusually somber. "Captain, the structural integrity of the space-time fabric is rapidly deteriorating. The Rustwing has inadvertently caused a rift. If it isn't sealed, it will spread, affecting not just this sector, but potentially the entire galaxy." Vance felt a chill run through him. They had done something extraordinary, something no one had ever imagined. But now, they were facing the consequences. The Rustwing's power had opened a door they couldn't close. As if to answer his unspoken thoughts, the view outside the bridge windows shifted. The stars had changed. It wasn't just that they had moved. Some of them had vanished entirely. The galaxy was warping, bending in ways that couldn't be explained by any science Vance knew. "We're running out of time," Vance muttered, his mind racing. "We need to fix this. Now." Mara worked furiously at the console, trying to reverse the damage. She didn't have the answers, but neither did anyone else. The Rustwing had done something so powerful, so dangerous, that they were now at the mercy of the very force they had unleashed. The universe itself seemed to be unraveling. Vance turned to the crew, his expression resolute. "Get us to the core. We need to find a way to stabilize this before it's too late." The crew scrambled into action. Time was running out. They had once been the underdogs, underestimated by the Concorde and the galaxy. Now they had become the keepers of something so powerful, it could reshape the very universe. But the cost of that power was more than they had bargained for. The Rustwing groaned under the weight of its own power, every moment feeling like it could shatter the fragile balance that held the universe together. Captain Elias Vance stood at the helm, watching the unstable space outside the bridge windows. Stars flickered and vanished, entire regions of the galaxy bending and twisting in ways that defied understanding. It was as if they had cracked the very code of existence, and now they had to find a way to fix it. Mara Lee worked at her station, sweat beading on her forehead. She wasn't just adjusting controls anymore. She was trying to hold back a storm. The fabric of space itself was tearing apart, and every second that passed felt like it could be their last. "We're running out of options," Mara said, her voice tight with exhaustion. "I can't stabilize the rift. The damage is too widespread." Vance didn't respond immediately. He stared out into the chaos beyond, feeling the weight of the situation. They had won the battle against the Concorde, but at what cost? The Rustwing had been the key to humanity's survival and rise in the galaxy. It had allowed them to fight back against a superior enemy. But now, it was a ticking time bomb, threatening to take everything down with it. "We can't just let it all collapse," Vance muttered to himself. Sage, the ship's AI, spoke up again, its voice unusually quiet. "Captain, the only option left is to perform a full reset of the ship's core. The power surge from the Rustwing will need to be contained and redirected. If successful, the rift could be sealed. If it fails, the damage could be irreversible." Vance glanced at the crew. They were all tired, scared, but they had come this far. They had already rewritten the laws of space and time once. Was it possible to do it again? Was it even right to try? "Do it," Vance said finally. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. "We don't have any other choice." Mara nodded, her fingers flying across the console as she began the reset procedure. The ship's systems hummed with the strain of it all. They had already stretched the limits of what the Rustwing could do. Now, they had to push it even further. Outside the ship, the rift in space widened, a growing tear in the universe that threatened to swallow everything in its path. The stars seemed to shift violently, but even as the Rustwing hurtled toward the unknown, something shifted in the space around it. The ship was doing more than trying to fix the rift. It was becoming a bridge between the old laws and something new, something humanity could control. Suddenly, the lights on the bridge flickered, and the ship shook violently. For a moment, everything went dark. Vance's heart skipped a beat, but then, just as suddenly, the shaking stopped. "We've done it," Mara said, her voice filled with disbelief. "The rift's closing. The universe is stabilizing." Vance watched as the stars outside began to return to their normal positions, the galaxy slowly repairing itself. The Rustwing had not only survived, but had managed to repair the damage it had caused. They had rewritten the rules of reality. Again. But this time, they had done it with purpose. "We did it," Vance repeated, a feeling of awe in his chest. Humanity did it. The Concord fleet had been defeated, but more importantly, humanity had proven itself to be more than just survivors. They were creators. The Rustwing had given them the ability to rewrite reality. But now, they would have to learn how to use it responsibly. As the ship drifted through the calm of restored space, Vance felt the weight of the journey ahead. The galaxy was no longer the same. The Rustwing had shown them that humanity wasn't weak. Far from it. But the question remained, what would they do with this power now? "We've just begun," Vance said, a determined look on his face. "This is our future, and we're not going to waste it." With that, the Rustwing moved forward into the unknown, ready to explore a new galaxy, a new reality, one shaped by human hands.